All right, guys, this is our monthly podcast that we do together.
Whee.
My name is Steve, and if you don't know, this is Cat John. Welcome to my podcast.
Oh my gosh, I hate you.
For those of you who don't know, one of the things that I do is I do business consulting. So today, to totally mix up the style and vibe of this podcast,
You are taking over.
I would like to do a business consulting session on your relationship.
How does that make sense?
I'll explain. Perfect
Alright.
question.
I will trust
So,
you.
in business or any other thing in life where you want success, the first thing you need is a goal. You need an outcome. You need to know what you're moving towards. And then once you know what that goal is, then you can break it down into little steps that you take moving forward, and then you achieve your outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me that a lot of people do not have any goal for their relationship. They don't have any structure. They don't have any benchmarks. So therefore, how can you possibly have a successful one if you're just going like day by day, aimlessly, not knowing what the destination is? So today I want to talk about how we successfully have a goal for our relationship, which is why we achieve success.
True. So, do you remember at the start of our relationship, we didn't have a goal, did we? Did we set it off at the very beginning?
No, there was a fucking in and out
period.
mucking around bit, and then we sat down and went, all right, like this is what we need to do to really have some framework and guidelines for how our relationship will be successful.
Yeah, that's true.
And look, it sounds really, really clinical. It's actually not.
It's not. It was
when
it's
you
hard.
break it down, what it's about is it's about setting intentions for your relationship. So, for example, a goal in your relationship might be to have fun. A goal in your relationship might be to have, intimacy, to shag X times a week, or to make sure you've got a loving life. A goal for your relationship might be to have date
I don't
nights.
think it's that. I'm gonna asterisk that. I don't think that it's to shag 3 times a week.
I'm a guy. That's how we talk.
Yeah, I get that. But in terms of what we're talking about, in terms of intention, it is about, if you go beyond shagging 3 times a week, it's that closeness,
Connection.
it's that intimacy.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
But it's about working through all the different areas of a relationship. So it can be intimacy, it can be fun, it can be, what are you prepared to accept for trust? What are your goals for trust? What are your goals for communication? What are your goals for everything? It's almost like creating, and I know we did a podcast on this like many years ago, but we're obviously a lot more developed now.
Well, I am.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Fucking uppercut right in the face. Jesus. It's about effectively setting an identity of what your relationship looks like. And if you know what that identity or that goal is, whatever vocabulary works best for you, then there's 2 things that happen. The first thing is when you're in it, because you're in line with that goal. But more importantly, when you're out of alignment, you will know. Yeah. Because if you have an intention that your relationship is trustworthy and fun and connected and communicative, and you find yourself in a reality where you're untrusting and being a fucking drainer, or there is no fun and there's just tension, or there is no intimacy, or you fail to communicate and you're not communicating well, and there's just this big void, well, then you're out of alignment with the end result of your relationship, right?
Yeah.
So it's really what we want to do today is just to share, not to preach, but to share how we do it. And then maybe, you take this off to your partner, because, by the way, this is not a one person thing. You don't get to sit down and write what you want in your relationship and not tell the other fucking person. No, this is a combined process where you both come together and define the shared end result.
I want to say that's actually a pretty good point, because
of course it's a good point. I made it. Right back at you.
Oh, you're such a loser.
Yeah.
There are some people who will genuinely want to do this, but their partner will think it's wanky.
Yeah.
Their partner will be like, well, what's the point? We're already doing it. Like it will be met with resistance.
Yeah.
So if you're in this situation, listen to this entire podcast and share this with your partner. Don't be the one to try and do it all yourself. You can say, hey, listen to these two peeps. I reckon they might have something for us. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. And look, it's a tricky situation when you have that, because some people aren't ready for this level of work, or they're worried that if anything changes, you know, the relationship will end. And we're going to talk about all those things actually in this, around how we achieve this level of relationship.
Yeah.
Because as most of you know who listen to Kat's work, and sorry if I'm looking away from the camera, but I have a dog chewing my hand.
Yeah.
For most of you who listen to this work, you know about the concept of the ego. You know about how it comes and messes with you. You know how if you want to trust your partner, but then in order to trust them, you have to test them. And then in order to test them, you know, you ultimately don't trust them. And then you just create this self-fulfilling prophecy of things being fucked, right? So if you have someone who's not interested in this sort of work, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, they're not a good person. It just might mean that they need to just, you know, be gently brought into it, right?
Yeah.
And if us, you know, them listening to us helps, well, cool. So now we've worked out a few things. One, the fact that this is not a goal-setting exercise that you do on your own. It's a goal-setting exercise that you have to do in conjunction with your partner. And you know, the great bit about it is just the process of going through this actually brings out so much conversation, right? Because it's almost like, you know, for any of you guys who know, like the master wheel of life, you know, where you're basically rating yourself on like health, wealth, and relationships, and job satisfaction, that sort of stuff. You know, you're effectively doing a wheel of life for just your relationship. And for example, if you sit down and you say, okay, let's talk about communication. How do we want to communicate? And your partner goes, well, I don't want you to communicate. Like, how I am is what I am. You know, cool. We've generated a big red flag through this process that you can then decide, well, is that a deal breaker or not a deal breaker? But
how do we want to deal with difficult conversations? You know, I want to be able to, so an intention that you might have is I want to be able to work through things as consciously as possible, and, you know, not go to bed like fighting, those types of things. And they are things that you can add into your wheel.
Yeah, correct. So if we start with communication, because this seems to be an area where a lot of relationships are fucked, you know, and one where I personally think ours does pretty well.
Yeah, we talk about everything.
So, but it's not just that. So under communication, there's style, right? So we don't yell. It's just unnecessary, right? There's no screaming.
No.
If we have something to talk about, we sit down and we talk about it. We also
don't swear at each other.
Yeah, we don't swear at each other. And when we talk about it, we also refer to our egoic thoughts in the third person. Now, for some of you who have done this work, this might make sense. For some of you, like, what the fuck is he talking about? So basically, we both operate under the premise that there is your fundamental truth, which is what you're born with. And then you have your egoic dysfunction or personality profile, which gets created from, you know, all the wounds of your childhood, right? So in my case, my egoic dysfunction is power based. So when I was a kid, for whatever fucked up reason, I decided that I was powerless. So a lot of the things that I generate from an egoic point of view are power based, which, you know, might be like cars or, you know, houses or businesses or whatever, right? So having an understanding of that, if Kat and I are talking about something, I will say to her, my ego is saying this, right? Not I, because I have the conscious understanding that I'm not my ego.
Yeah.
I'm aware of my ego. And by being able to observe it, I'm then able to talk to Kat from a place of seeing it as a third party, not as me.
And that's even when we are in disagreement or in something that is heated between us, and I can tell that you're not okay, like you're pissed off with me, and vice versa, I will say to you, tell me what your ego's saying.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not asking him, what are you thinking? You know, what's going on in you? I'm like, tell me what your ego is saying. And I know his ego is not going to want to say anything nice about me in that moment, but I'm allowing him to clear his ego out, and I'm able to receive it most of the time, not all the time, from that. Okay, cool. That's his
ego.
ego.
Yeah.
That's his dysfunction, or pain. It doesn't. I mean, yes, it's dysfunctional, but it's also pain.
Yeah.
Without taking it all the way to my heart.
Yeah. So we started with this whole wheel of life for this relationship, right? Now we've broken it down to one segment of that, which is communication. Then you can see within that one segment of communication, we've now set these rules, right? There is to be no swearing, there is to be no yelling. We're going to talk in relation from the perspective of the ego, and there's a whole bunch of other ones, right, that have just formulated over the years. But the point is this: if we're communicating, and not that it ever happens, but say we did start to yell or swear at each other or whatever, the first thing we'd say is, hey, this is not in line with the way that we communicate in this relationship, because the relationship has an identity.
Yeah.
One of those identity factors is communication. Within that communication is the way that comes forward, right? So at
we're
that
able
point
to pull
in time,
each other up
we would know.
very
Yeah.
swiftly.
Correct. We would instantly know and say, hey, no, that's not how we do
promise.
it. We
Yeah.
made this agreement, right? Now, if you don't have this,
Yeah.
you're fucked,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't. There is no benchmark.
Yeah, because
there's
then
no
you're
framework.
saying, don't talk to me like that. And you're like, I can fucking talk to you however I want to talk to you, because there's no
The agreement.
Yeah, there's no boundary of like where you can and where you can't go. And I know that if I ever step over our agreement, I can feel it. I'm like, oh, fuck, I went beyond where I know I'm not meant to go there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not meant to do that dig or have that poison tone that I can get sometimes when I'm tired or angry or whatever.
Yeah, and equally, I will generally pull you up on it within about 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah.
So they're just some tips, right? There might be more, but things that you might want to write down if you're listening is, set some ground rules around communication, playfulness, like, what does it look like? Intimacy, what does that look like? And just, I guess, it's really just about making sure that, like, you're both on the same page. Life is hard enough being one human. Trying to then line it up with a second human and move in the same direction is even harder. And then chuck in a few little pricky humans known as kids, and it gets even harder again.
I think it's important to add in here too, like within that circle, certainly it's in ours, and I'm sure it will be in yours as well, about your own circle of friends, like interacting with others, social settings, etc. Because if you talk about that, like one person might say when you talk, setting up your intentions, that it's important for me to have my own time. I love to have my own time. I do like to see my friends on my own. And the other person might be like, that's cool. I'm more of an introverted person. I actually really like my own time just by myself. And sometimes I won't want to have to go to all of your family events or all of your friends' things. And again, we set that up. So it's like, all right, cool. There's some leniency and there's some leeway, rather than, the high expectation of not having these intentions of, right, I want them to come to every single thing with me because that's what they should do. Yeah. And then when they don't, you feel let down, but the other person doesn't even know you had those thoughts in the beginning. Yeah,
you don't have to be a mirror of each other. That being said, the little asterisks I will put on this, and whenever we've taught courses before, it's always there. This exercise can lead to conversations where you may just realize, this is not my person.
Yeah.
And that is
isn't
okay.
That awesome, though?
Right?
Like upfront, like seeing that sooner.
Totally.
Than later.
And that's what I mean. That is 100% okay. It is not a healthy thing for any person to stay in a shit relationship just because they've been in it for X amount of years, right? We live once, as far as we know, in this lifetime that you'll experience. So fucking make the most of it.
Yeah.
And that means if you're sitting there and like we watch this show, I don't know if you guys have it around the world, but it's called Married at First Sight, right? And it's an Australian show, and basically they take complete strangers and they marry them immediately, and you then watch for 8 weeks while they basically fucking implode because half the time the producers deliberately set people up with like profiles that we can see would never work, and they want the drama. The point is this. There are some relationships that you see there where observing, you're just like, these guys aren't going to work, right? Like one, intimacy, like physical touch is so important. And the other one is like, I'm not interested at all in physical touch. It's like, how long can you make that work for before it's just not going to work?
It
right?
can work, because if you look at it, like using that example, that girl, that woman, she was brought up with physical touch, love, etc. The boy, the man, wasn't. So they have an opportunity to grow. So it's just because like I don't like touch, what I do, then we're over.
No, it's if they're incapable of changing, right?
Everyone's capable of change.
Yes, but people,
they have to want it.
Yeah. There was an old expression, like if there's 6 birds on a power line and 5 decide to fly away, how many are left?
1.
No.
Why?
All 6. You can decide heaps of shit, doesn't mean you'll do it. So it comes down to deciding to do something versus actually actioning it, are fundamentally different. But instead of digressing to that, all I wanted to really just say is that through this process, you may find that there are things there that, are irreconcilable. And if that's the case, that's okay. It's provided you with at least the opportunity to make a powerful choice for yourself, to either A, realize what the issues are and work on them, or B, realize that this is never going to work, or C, to just accept the fact that you're not brave enough to leave a shit relationship and you live with it.
Because I can
right?
see how this plays out. Like, say, for example, in someone's wheel, they want, and I sort of want to give like examples because I think this will be helpful. Like, if in your wheel you want to have trust in your relationship, and so with that trust, you both want freedom to do the things that you enjoy doing without being controlled, without being questioned, right? So then you go, cool, that's in our intention, that's in our wheel, and then you go on into your relationship. And so there's 2 edges that I see. One is someone will take the piss of that, the piss out of that, and sort of take it to the extreme. It's like, hey, if you trust me, you'd let me do this and turn off my phone and not have to call you back for 5 hours. Like, that is something that you can call someone out on. Or conversely, you legitimately just want to have a night out, or you want to do something without your partner, and the other partner becomes super controlling, doesn't stop calling, doesn't stop texting, fakes feeling sick or whatever it may be. So you end up coming home. Like, they're all the flags, you know what I mean? Or like for us, being loving in our relationship and close is important to us. And part of that is we want to, part of that intention is that we want to have a relationship out of want, not out of need. So that becomes, okay, how do we contribute together the intention of a really loving relationship? Well, we need to make sure that we don't get into full fucking comfy zone, treat each other like crap because we're in a needy type codependent relationship. We want to be in, I choose you every day. If we want a relationship that is honest and open, then what are you both going to do to contribute to that? And they can become part of the next best steps.
Yep.
Like, how you're talking about intimacy before. Like, it could be that you set out to have sex twice a week, 3 times a week, or it could be it's a night of one night a week of no phones, no technology. We did that over COVID.
Together. Yep.
That's what we do with our scenic Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, we have our little date thingy.
Yeah.
So look, it's that's just Daisy's way of saying that she agrees. But this is not about, when we're not asking you to write like a constitution of your relationship that, you go, well, section 7, paragraph B, subsection 9 says that you're not allowed to do this. It's more around the writing down process is more around just if this is new to you, it's a nice way to just get a general framework, right? We don't have any of this written down. We just know now because we've discussed it. We've talked about it and we've agreed. And we're very lucky that from day one, we've always been pretty well aligned in the way that we think. We're both independent, so we don't have a codependent relationship. Neither of us is needy or clingy, which is always a nice start. But yeah, I think for anyone listening who's in a relationship, if this is resonating with you, it's resonating because you know that this could be the missing link, the thing that really helps you to kind of get the thing back on the rails. Because it's just so hard when you don't know the destination.
And I guess if you are listening to this and you're thinking, oh yeah, me and my partner, we don't speak kindly to one another, or we do raise our voices, or we do give each other the cold shoulder. Like you and I, we both said, okay, in our wheel, we want to make sure that when we do have disagreements, because that's bound to happen, we want to deal with it with the most integrity as we possibly can, and look to get over it, not skim over things if there are actual things we need to look at and really drill down into. But once we have done that, then we want to get over it and then get back into being in love and being whatever else. So if you're listening to this and you're like, fuck, maybe I am being really controlling, or maybe I'm not trusting, or our communication styles aren't good, and I give the cold shoulder for way too many days, and we're in a really shitty pattern. This is such a simple thing that you can do. And sometimes, I know we haven't written it down, but writing it down can be helpful, because you can actually see it in front of you. And the both of you, if you're in a relationship, you might do it separately and then bring it together and then talk it out together and then combine it,
There is one big caveat to all of this, and that is for anyone who is listening that hasn't done the work on understanding your own ego. And that work involves, first of all, profiling, what your egoic dysfunction looks like, which you can do. Kat teaches it if you're interested. Understanding what the nature of your egoic dysfunction is, how it plays out in your life. If you don't know all this stuff, this is kind of like almost like you need to do it first, because the problem is showing up into this with your ego, you're basically just going to be showing up dysfunctionally, right?
And everyone shows up with their ego.
I know. I'm saying if you're not aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're, like, for example, I'm going to go back to the show for a second, right? There's this lady on the show who got matched with this awesome guy. He's like emotionally intelligent. He's a really good looking dude. Like just every chick in Australia would want him, right? And if you're Australian, then you'll know I'm talking about Duncan, right? And then his partner Alyssa also started out really, really well, right? They were connected, they were loving, and then you could just see she just started to fucking blow it up, right? And you could see her egoic dysfunction was that he's going to leave me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow it up first. And no matter what this guy did, good, bad, or anything, he was always wrong, because she wanted to make sure that relationship didn't work, because she was so scared of losing him that in order to make sure that she didn't, she fucking blew it up, which is totally, counterintuitive, but that's the nature of ego. That's what the ego
does. It's self-protective.
Correct.
So she in that example, when she met him, she was open, she was loving, she was like, you could see her like, oh, this is my Prince Charming. And then the closer they got, the more intimate they got, the more her walls started to come out. She started to pick apart his behavior, which was actually very okay in terms of how he was showing up, at least from my perspective anyway.
Dude, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like she literally, you could actually watch her press the button.
It's painful
on
to
the
watch.
self-destruct button. And why I'm raising it is that if this is you, hypothetically, then you have to ask yourself, well, how can you show up to do this process with your partner if you're going to be bringing all that shit along? The first thing that anyone has to do is to first address themselves and to understand what is truth, what isn't truth. How does their ego show up in their life? What can you do about it so you can observe it? Because until you can do that, it makes it really, really difficult to unconsciously engage with someone else.
Because in disagreements, it's your ego fighting, right? So when you are really bringing in your ego, their ego, it's going to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. And that's why disagreements and, frustrations, they last for like sometimes days, I mean, an hour with you, like I don't think we've ever been pissed off for more than an hour.
Yeah. No.
I mean, that feels like an eternity.
Yeah, it does.
And I certainly used to do that. And the reason why I share this as well in here is because I used to do those things. I used to be very controlling. I used to cold shoulder my ex-boyfriends for a really long time to punish them. It's like, ha, you've hurt me. You've betrayed my trust, and now I shall punish. And I certainly knew that when I got together with Steve, that firstly, this wasn't a man who was going to take any of that shit, and I neither wanted to take my own shit. So if you are in a relationship and you really want this to work, then like you said, first, it's always you in the mirror.
Mm.
It's always you and the mirror. And it always will be. It always will be. And then when you bring that, when you are in a relationship, it's all amplified. So, but that is definitely one tool that we have used for us that helps us move through things pretty swiftly.
And luckily for every single person listening or watching, if you're on YouTube, you have the best possible coach in the world at your disposal to teach you about that. So reach out if you feel intuitively.
That's very kind.
Yeah, I was talking about myself. If you feel intuitively that this is something that you need to work on, and it's scary because it means that you got to go in and have a fucking look. But you know what? Go in and have a fucking look. But if you're ready, then reach out. Kat has a number of programs and courses. They're all designed to do this. It strips apart exactly what you're all about so you can show up better in life. And then once you show up better in life, then you can show up better in your relationship.
Yeah.
It is, I've always said it every time, it is not an option. If you want to have a better quality outcome, you need to do this work.
Amen.
Amen, sister.
Mic drop it, baby.
Until next month. Bye-bye.